Seconds. Ah, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to our next episode of Masters of Product. Our topic for today is why every board needs a product-minded leader. And to help us with that topic, I have Diego Ducati. He's the CPO at Box. He has nearly 30 years of experience in driving product innovation in companies like Box and Adobe. He also serves on several boards, including FreePick. I'm so glad he's part of it. We've had multiple conversations. I have no idea how excited I am to actually have this on recording. As for me, I'm your host, Mustafa Kapadia. I help product organizations figure out how to use AI so they can be more productive and effective. You can learn more about me and my services at echo-point.com. Diego, my friend, so thank you for being here. This is going to be awesome. I'm glad that we can finally make this work.
So glad to be here.
Diego, if it's okay with you, let's just kind of jump in, right? And like I was telling you right before, ever since you and I started talking about this topic, I've had several CPOs and product executives come to me and share with me, similar to what we've said, is that number one, boards are looking for more and more product-minded executives to join. And I think AI has a lot to do with that. Or there are CPOs who are looking to join boards because they're more, because they bring that product experience to it. So let's start with that topic. Let's start with that question. Why do you think companies are looking for product-minded people to join their board? I mean, I know you sit on boards, people are approaching you to be on boards. I'm curious, what's your perspective?
I think it's a good question and it's very timely because I see this happening more and more now. And one of the reasons is the major technological shift that AI has caused. So when companies were not prepared to adapt the way they work, adapt the way they hire, and adapt their product to be AI ready or AI centric, many companies thought and continue to do basically a shift towards maybe we need to have support not only on the executive team, but also at the board level to really guide the executive team with the right questions and the right support. It's not only for AI reasons, but that's one of them. Another one that is somewhat related is just the pace of innovation has accelerated, maybe in part because of AI, but even if you're not working on AI or even using AI that much, you're competing with companies that are innovating much, much faster.
Yes.
And innovation in product requires product-minded leadership. So companies that perhaps were not that product-centric may need to shift to more product-centricity and bringing CPOs to the board.
I like that. I agree with you. If you don't mind, can I ask you, let's go a bit deeper. Do you think that they're doing it because they see AI as an existential threat, or do you see that as an opportunity, or is it both? And that's why they want people like you to join the board.
I do think it's both. Some companies are going to disappear if they don't basically approach AI head on and modify the way they work or the way their products are sold or created. But in other cases, it's not existential, but it would be a competitive advantage to basically operate better or to innovate more. The fact that many boards actually had an expert in law, or it's kind of a legal corner, an expert in finance with a financier or somebody that worked as a CFO is standard practice. But it was not yet standard practice to bring CPOs to boards. And for these pressures to either survive or simply accelerate business is becoming more necessary.
100%. I actually think that the nature of the game is changing, right? And I think, like you said, the pace of innovation changes, and I think having the right people on the board makes a big difference. So tell me, as you join the boards, what kind of things are these companies asking you to do? Like, what are the type of challenges that they want you to solve?
So it depends on the company, depends on the stage of maturity, depends on the size, depends on the market, depends on how the team is composed and how is it changing. But in general, one of the things to do first is to assess if the product strategy seems sound, if the plans make sense from a product perspective, if the team seems to be solid and on solid grounds, prepared for what's coming next. So that's one of the typical things to do. The same way that maybe a legal expert will be talking with the chief legal officer about how the contracts are and other elements. a product expert would actually focus on the product team, the product strategy, and the execution.
Yeah.
Is another dimension that typically is asked about, hey, what are the specific tools that would be helpful or would be useful for a company to accelerate development and to accelerate deployment? And that does not only apply to engineering, but also could apply to, say, good product tools that are new and perhaps AI-centric.
Yeah, 100%.
That maybe the commercial team can use to
Yes.
get faster leads, to complete, say, the profile of each one of your customers or campaigns in a more efficient way, and so on.
Yeah. When you look at when you're doing this assessment on the product piece, right? Are you looking for, like, how deep do you go into? Do you look at the entire business model? You look at pricing? Do you look at the product roadmap? Do you look at the way the team is operating? Like, what are some of the things that you look at first before you actually even figure out where you can help them next?
Very good question. Yes, product doesn't mean the code if it's a software company, or the hardware if it's a hardware company. Product in all capital letters includes all of those.
Yes.
So when you're assessing how is the product strategy, you're looking into, hey, are we charging the right way? Is the product model in a way that actually is most conducive to accelerate business? So this actually interface with go-to-market there that is very important.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think pricing changes dramatically in the world of AI, right?
Yes.
Because we are going more into metered pricing as opposed to a la carte,
Exactly.
one piece.
Yeah, I was going to go exactly there. So the models that might have worked until now, where maybe you were charging per seat, you may want to have now basically a volume-based model that actually the volume-based also could be different depending on what your product is. In most cases, would be metered based on some kind of metric, some kind of unit. And many companies have not done it before. There are even some environments where the charging could be done based on outcomes.
Yes.
All of that is open, and it would be a good idea to see how is the product and how ready is the product to consider any of them. It's not only what would be good from a business perspective, but can you mirror properly? Is the product conducive in the way it's structured and prepared to then offer it that way? So it is a product question in interface with all the other areas of finance and go-to-market.
Yeah. Do you see, when you sit on these boards, you see certain patterns that you always say that I know this is always going to be an area of challenge or problem? Are there certain patterns emerging or trends?
It's somewhat early because, especially with AI, there are many things that are still very much changing, but there are some patterns. Some companies found a way to be, say, very marketing-centric or very sales-centric. And now when forced to innovate more because of competitive pressures or risk, or simply the opportunity to grow faster, they need to kind of change a little bit the ethos of the leadership team. Not necessarily changing the team, but actually shift sometimes budgets or shift focus to say, hey, we have to then innovate in a different direction. The innovation was to sell more of the same. Now we may need to add a different product line that basically supplements what we had before. Some companies that were very much not product-centric have a harder time doing that shift. If you were very product-centric, perhaps you were closer to these new things that you need to do now, given the opportunity with AI and other things that have emerged.
I see that. I mean, I can definitely feel and relate that, because I think a lot of companies that are sales and marketing centric suddenly now in this world of AI have to be more product centric, right? Because the sales and marketing role is fundamentally changing, right? The way people find stuff and the way they buy stuff with AI is going to change. And so now suddenly you have to be product led, even if you may not want to be product led.
Yes, or at least very product conscious.
Yes.
The CEO might not be a product centered in terms of career, but if they realize this is a necessity or a necessary next step, they can expand the team or augment the opportunity to do more, perhaps with the right tools. So it's not only through people change. Many times it's simply changing focus to add more resources or to change the tooling or to basically expand what is already working and sometimes deprecate some areas that are not competitive in this new environment.
Yeah, because I mean, Diego, frankly speaking, we're talking about fundamentally business model changes, right? Just the way you go to market, the way you charge, and so on and so forth. I'm curious, without you giving any proprietary information out, I mean, have you, just from some of the boards that you sit on, what has been What has been the biggest challenges or examples that you can give in which you're helping companies with business model changes?
It's also relative to the specifics of the business, but there is something somewhat common.
Yeah.
Because in AI, there is no clear winner takes all.
Mm,
The ability to work with many players in the ecosystem changes how the product is built, but also potentially how to charge.
yes.
Because if you're working with multiple LLMs or if you're working with multiple agentic platforms,
Yes.
you may need to interact with ways that are costing you differently. So your cost
Yeah.
basis might be different, but
Yeah.
also the implementation of the product needs to be done in a more uh, interconnected way, more neutral in some cases,
Yeah.
where you work with the best in each case. And the best might be technologically best, pricing best. It could be
Yeah.
also from a constraint that is legal or regulatory. It could be geographical. There are many constraints. So that
Mm,
flexibility in other environments where there were clear winners in some areas, you do not have to platform the product and platform the cost basis, but also how you charge with that in mind. So that actually brings a challenge also on the pricing front because
yes.
you have a varying cost basis. You may need to have a pricing that also works with a very varying cost basis, especially in a place and in a time where we don't know yet how everything is going to evolve
We
because
have
it's
no
so
idea.
rapidly changing. So
I
it's a
agree.
rapid moving target in a way.
Yeah. And the other part about this, the pricing thing, which by the way, I find fascinating, is that it's not a fundamentally different way for the company to behave. But now you have to educate your customers to buy differently as well, which by the way makes it even more challenging, right? Because it used to be that you pay 10, 20 bucks an hour, I mean, 10, 20 bucks a month for a seat. And it's a la carte and you can get whatever you want. Now suddenly that's not the case anymore, just because the fundamental business has changed, right? Your pricing is your cost is more variable, so your price is more variable. And I'm
Yes,
curious, have you run into clients or companies or boards like that in which they've had to solve both the challenges, internal and external?
I see also absolutely yes, but also it's different in enterprise than in consumer.
Yes,
So
100%.
some of the work I do, which is more consumer oriented, requires a type of information to the consumer on to what extent things are variable. So you
Yeah,
may buy a seat with a fixed price for the month, but you have a cap on level of utilization, and if you
yeah,
go over that, you need to pay more. So it is somewhat standardized. Many companies have done that motion or motions like this in the past that kind of educated the market. Adobe is a clear example, and it worked for Adobe, but also many users want to have a bit more flexibility, especially
yes,
in the enterprise. The dynamic is very different. In the enterprise, you have customers that are concerned, especially say the head of IT or the
yeah.
CEO or the CFO, that
They want
basically
predictability. They don't
they
want
need
variability.
predictability.
Yes,
Exactly. So to be aware of what's going to cost us to let our customers use
yeah,
or our employees use a set of tools is very important. So for that, there are ways to also instrument the product to maintain the decision makers and the
yeah,
administrators of the systems informed as they consume the product, but also to make sure that not only your cost basis but the offering has a price point that also encourages adoption. Because
yes,
with all these shifts, you don't want to stifle adoption with basically a greedy approach to
yeah,
pricing. So that
yeah.
balance is something that is also very much in the top of
Yeah,
mind of many boards today.
I agree. And I think if you're sitting on the board, that's a tough problem to solve. Like, how do you drive adoption, but at the same time, you're not throwing money out the door, right?
Exactly.
Um,
That crossing of those two curves is the sweet spot that all companies look
yes,
for. There is no pure science. Some of it is also experimentation. So
yeah,
it's important to have those discussions on a regular basis. And this is another driver for product-minded people on boards to bring the
yeah,
discussion with the executive team and to
yeah,
help them to have a sounding board, no pun intended
yeah,
in there, to basically say, well, with this sounding board, you can actually discuss what would be the right balance. Definitely don't price it too low because you leave money on the table. If you price it too high, adoption is not going to happen.
yes, yeah.
But
And
that's
then
always
that entire journey to get there, right? Because that itself
right.
is a journey. Because now you're changing people and the way you work the operations and so on and so forth. Um, I'm curious, and I want to get into operations too. But before we get there, what are some of the other challenges that they come to? Like, what are the burning platforms? I know pricing and business model is a big one because that's an existential threat. right? Um, what are they seeing? Are they seeing other challenges that they say, you know what, we need people like Diego, or we need Diego or people like Diego to sit on the board? Where else are they coming to you
This
for?
is also a great question because it is absolutely true that it's not the pricing model only. Many
Yeah.
companies are also concerned about security or operational
Yeah.
challenges,
Yes.
the governance of who gets to use these new tools. And again, not only AI, this is in a more general sense,
Hmm.
innovation wise, it's a wide range of areas where, okay, well, now we're going to move the platform to have new products, expand
Yes.
what we offer. What are we creating from a liability perspective in terms of
Yes.
compliance? Are we allowing governance? You're selling to the enterprise. What would happen now with all these users, with these new things we're starting to put on the table? Is that going to create security challenges? So
Yeah.
companies are also concerned about that. This is
Yeah.
the job for the executive team to manage, but a good board would have, from a legal perspective, an opinion, from a cost perspective, an opinion, and from a product perspective, an opinion to really
Yeah.
help guide the executive team on how to be cautious, but at the same time,
I agree.
adventurous enough to
Yeah.
basically accelerate business.
Yeah. And if you just take that security, because there's no clear-cut answer, right? If you go back 5, 10 years, there was a very nice fine line between security of what you can and cannot do. And now suddenly you get to these large language models in which people are sharing all kinds of information, or you're building a product on top of these large language models that are sharing all this information. And now suddenly you have to have a much more nuanced perspective on security, which is why I love the idea that you're not just bringing legal people into it. You got to bring the product people into it. You got to put sales into it, because all of these things have an impact on the build, on the product, and the way you build it.
Yeah, right on. That's clearly a multifaceted challenge. The security challenge requires that you would have a good CISO. I mean, like you
Yes.
said, years ago, that role didn't exist. Now is
Yes.
standard, it's a must.
Yeah.
In the same way, it's a must to have a CPO today in the executive team to really think
Yeah.
about product strategy and execution and to support other functions in how things are created, but eventually also rolled out.
Yeah.
And on the board side, is similar. You need to have also board members that are knowledgeable on cybersecurity, because otherwise the dialogue with the executive team would be
Yeah.
limited. And you need to have executives that are going to be able to think about the way to architect the product strategy and the implementation. So these compliance, security, and governance challenges are taken care of from the
Yeah. I
strategy
100% agree.
to roll out.
Which actually brings to the larger topic, and I know this is something that you and I spend some time talking about it too, is that AI is, we talked about AI changing the business model. We talked about the impact on security and governance. But the other big shift is that it's going to change the way we work, right? Not just from product and engineering that you talked about, but that goes across every role the company has, right? And I know some of the stories you were sharing with me is helping companies figure out, what does the new operations look like? How do you become more efficient? How do you become more effective? I'm curious if you have any thoughts on that or stories that you can share.
There are multiple angles to that. It's a wonderful question too. I would say
Take your favorite angle. Let's do that.
um, I would mention a couple of angles that I think are very complementary.
Yeah.
The budget to innovate in AI may
Mhm.
come from the IT side, where you actually make IT more efficient by not having so many applications
Yeah.
that were required, where you shrink the portfolio to fewer applications that are better integrated, that are also much more effective at getting the
Yes.
job done. And also in some areas, and some people talk about this, is not totally clear how much it would come from the human resources side, where maybe because of the efficiencies, people can do more work or less people are necessary. And this is
Mm.
controversial, but these are two angles. So the IT and the human resources side both contribute to potential acceleration of business.
Yes.
But it does
Yeah.
not mean that you actually need to have these people. You can actually empower them and get more productivity. Most
Yes.
companies I work with, and mostly everybody I interact today, actually are not thinking of shrinking the headcount, are thinking of basically turbocharging the existing
Yes.
team. In some cases, they need to improve the knowledge, so there is training required,
Yeah.
or sometimes changing of the guard a little bit. But
Yeah.
in general, it's not about having less people, it's actually having the people produce more. What is the
Yes.
percentage boost that you get is still to be seen. Some areas talk about single digit numbers, and some talk about triple or quadruple digit numbers in terms of productivity boost. Depends. But
Yeah.
for sure, there is a boost. We already see
There
that
is 100%. We see that in our clients already. I mean, when we go in, we at a minimum we have PM saving at least 10 hours a week, right?
yes,
And that's
yes,
huge if you
it's
think about it.
humongous.
'Cause they
The
can,
the writing of the spec
yeah,
is ultra assisted by AI. The writing of
100%.
code is ultra assisted by AI.
Yes.
Also, when you're preparing a campaign or when you're completing your records of interactions because you're a salesperson trying to track everything you've been doing,
Yes.
that completion is important. The completeness of the record is essential. But it was taking many hours of your week when you had
Yes.
to not be
Yes.
talking to customers,
Yes.
always be closing. Well, some of the time you actually need to be completing those records. If now you can reduce that tenfold, fewer
Yeah.
time to
Yeah.
basically use
All,
hours
all
of
that
the
all
week.
that busy work can be then outsourced to a certain extent, right?
Yes,
And then you can then focus on things that really make a difference in the business and
exactly.
drive the needle. Because I
Yes,
think the other thing you and I talked about earlier is also, yes, we can make people more efficient and productive, but then people can do so much more, right? Not just more from a creative perspective or a strategic perspective, but now you can actually have, I'll talk about PMs because they're my favorite people. Um, you can now have PMs building prototypes on the fly,
yes,
right? And you can have them do things that they never thought about. They can talk to synthetic users to get different points of view. They can build digital twins of their competitors and figure out what the competition potential is going to do. And so you have all of these new capabilities that just did not exist, right?
that's a great point. We see virtually in every company that is starting to embrace these great new tools and new techniques, an acceleration of the time it takes to go from idea to
Uh,
demo. Idea to demo is so much shortened now
yes.
that is, and the demo doesn't need to be the final product.
No.
Of course, there's much more to do, but
Yeah.
the time it took to go from idea to demo before AI really started to flourish,
Yeah.
and again, we're also early in the process. This is going to get much better and much
Much
faster.
faster.
But
Yeah.
we're already
Yeah.
so much better and faster than we were
100%. I
even
mean,
say
yeah.
2 years ago, even 1 year ago. So the curve of
The
acceleration
curve
on
is just getting faster. Yeah. Because
yes,
I actually do think that the fundamental, so one of the things that we see with the clients is you can go to an idea to a prototype in less than a week, right? And just the whole process changes. And instead of doing a two-dimensional PRD, you can have now a three-dimensional prototype that you can then showcase to your engineers or your customers, or depending on who you want to talk to. And
yes.
ultimately, you may actually end up getting with some viable code that can eventually then be hardened to get into development.
Exactly right. Now, the acceleration is not only in product, as I was saying. I'm
Yes,
also very much close to product as a CPO, but I would say this is happening everywhere. On
100%.
product is allowing you to also vet multiple ideas with each
Mm,
other, compare. Because if building a prototype is so much faster, you sometimes can take the luxury, between quotes, of having more than one and truly compare options.
yes,
Before, it would have to be a theoretical comparison because it would be too expensive, too
yes,
timely to
yeah,
develop. That
yeah,
brings also better products to market and potentially
100%.
better market fit to those products because you have
Yes,
more options to try.
yeah,
All of this is actually moving at an extraordinary speed. Is really a beautiful time to basically be doing product because of this opportunity we have to
yes,
get our imagination into concrete
yeah.
demonstration.
I love that nuance that you bring in because sometimes people forget about that. But yes, you can prototype, but you can do multiple prototypes, which allow you to give multiple options. And in reality, it comes back to what you said earlier. It allows you to think better, right? And ultimately build a better solution that will ultimately help the customers. I'm curious, as you see things speeding up with product and development, I'm sure it's putting pressures on other parts of the organization as well, right? Because now sales and marketing, everybody has to now react to a different velocity, a different speed. Um, and I'm curious to see when you sit on these boards, what has been the reaction from other teams adjacent to product and how it's been moving?
It's an interesting point because I would say it has been changing over time.
Yes.
And I see this shift from, people talk about dog ears being, say, 7x human. Maybe we are now in mouse ears for AI because it's like 50x, what used to be. But
Yes.
there's a major acceleration. Now, there is still a cycle that actually follows a different cadence. What I see and how I see both
Hmm.
on boards on our day-to-day, at work, but also with customers in every area, is that initially people were like, oh my goodness, this is just too unknown, leave it alone. Later, the product teams were, okay, let's try, but the legal team, maybe not, because
Yes.
we don't know the implications. Eventually, later, there was, every 6 months was one of these cycles, was a
Yeah.
motion to basically think, well, maybe we should do it. Let's start exploring and basically shop, explore, try, talk to people, but try
Right.
in a theoretical way. And eventually, we are now moving to a very interesting stage where companies are truly starting to try with a specific vendor or a collection of vendors to build their own tech stack with these more innovative tools, to
Yes.
develop software faster, to develop prototypes faster, to try things, and to also include all of that in the day-to-day operations of the company and their own products as well. That is starting to happen, but they're not yet massive deployments in every company.
No.
We're still in the early innings of this process, which
Yeah.
speaks to the opportunity to really prepare, because you don't want to be thinking of the composition of your team or of your board,
Yeah.
or strategy, or the product itself, or the way you sell, to do it after everybody has done it. The time
Yes.
is about now to basically adopt and structure. So within the next 2 years, this massive wave that is now starting to be adopted
Yes.
doesn't catch you basically distracted.
100%. This is great. Diego, if it's okay with you, let me flip the question, right? So people get you or invite you to come to the board to be a massive change agent, right? And as much as that's exciting, I'm sure you get some type of pushback either from the board members or from the employees of the companies that you're sitting in. I'm curious, what are some of the resistance that you see when you're trying to either do the business model change or you're trying to help with legal and security, expand the definition of what that looks like, or even the operations piece? Any certain challenges that you have encountered so far?
I would say challenges might be different also based on the company. In some
Yeah.
companies, the challenge is an investment challenge, because you may want to
Mm,
shift a bit more focus on innovation to catch up
yeah.
and to
Well,
be
you got to find the budget for that.
exactly.
So
That's one type of challenge. Another
yeah,
challenge would be, well, we may need to train the team or get people with experience
yeah,
or with appetite in this
yeah.
area. So it could be also an HR type of challenge.
100%. Yeah.
In other scenarios, the challenge is to learn how to sell differently or to sell new products. So
Yes.
it's a bit more of, well, but we're already happy in this market. Why to worry
Yeah.
about something else, and so on. So the challenges are of different types. Something that I see that is somewhat common, that keeps repeating, is that there is an appetite to avoid being surprised, a bit later. So
Mm,
in general, even though the challenges are different in different companies, there is something common about. That's why the topic of today, which is that in basically inclusion of basically product-minded leaders in
yes.
every board. There is a commonality about knowing that we need to think about this. Now, similar to those cycles I was talking about, it takes some time to
Yeah.
really get to the next phase. Not every board has solved the problem yet of, okay, well, we
Mm,
may need to shift priorities or budget or focus on of the team we have. But all of them, everyone I'm talking to is discussing the topic. So
yeah.
the maturation of from discussing to fully implementing, there is a whole gamut
Yeah.
of that. But for sure is a topic on every table at the moment.
I agree. And, I like that point of view too, because in reality, they're asking people like you to come to the board because they want to be able to look around the corners, right? To see things that they have not seen so they can prepare for it. Because I think you're absolutely right. We're in this phase of massive disruption, which scares people, scares companies. And so you might as well be prepared. And I think this is one way of preparing for it. I have to ask this question because, like I said, I had a lot of my CPO friends come to me when I told them about this topic. They were fascinated, both from a point of view about, oh my God, you're absolutely right because I see this trend myself, or the other point of view saying, oh, you know what, I see this. How do I actually, how do I get onto one of these boards? So I'm curious, what's your secret? I mean, you've been lucky enough to be courted by several boards. So what, if you're asking other fellow CPOs who are interested in doing this, what's the best way to get onto a board?
Well, first, thank you. I'm very honored and humbled that I'm able to help in any way. I mean, this is something that is always a learning process. So maybe
Yes.
something we did not talk much about, but I'm very much doing this type of work from a mentoring perspective
Yeah.
to give, but also to learn, because in every company you're learning something new.
Yes.
So for me, this is a driving force. I think for most CPOs, for most people in product in general, I would say we tend to be lifelong learners, people that want to learn stuff, to discover something new, and to expand our horizons into areas that maybe connect with the prior, but
Yeah.
also bring some novelty. So I recommend for anybody thinking about that to find where you have a little bit of those two elements. Okay, what is the value you bring with your experience that is going to contribute, but also excited, I'm going to be learning something. Many people talk
Yeah.
about the networking value of it, which I think is important, but for product people in particular, it's also, I think, interesting to be learning something,
Yeah.
and but for sure to bring some, value of the experience you have that is going to help there. So that's one dimension of, okay,
Yeah.
check on that. Are you going to be useful? Are you going to be valuable? And is it going to be
Yes.
exciting to you?
100%. Yeah.
In addition to that, I think it's important to not overextend. For many of us that actually have an executive function, I
Yeah.
work as a CPO in a company with high demand. We're very busy, and it tends
Yes.
to be difficult to do. So don't take too many. Take one
Yeah.
and work there for a year and see how you feel. And
That's a good
check,
point.
can you
Yeah.
handle it?
Yeah.
Can you handle the truth? It's actually sometimes pretty hard,
Yeah.
because there are demands, not only schedule wise, but you need to be on top of things that requires meeting with people, not only at the board meeting, but there are other
Yeah.
meetings that need to
Well,
track.
I mean, a lot of the work that we do is all soft skills, right? And influencing and so on and so forth, which takes time and energy. And you're right, it takes time away from your executive duties at the current company.
Exactly.
100%
So
agree.
you need to absolutely validate that you can do it. Also validate with your company, your day job where you work
Yes.
normally, that everything is fine, because you absolutely have to avoid conflict of interest. Most
Yes.
companies are savvy about putting safeguards and forcing a validation, but you should start yourself. Make sure there's no conflict of interest. And then maybe another dimension to it is, even before starting, is why do you want to do it?
Yeah.
So many CPOs are great material for a CEO in the future,
Yes.
because you are the CEO of an area of a company or a
Yeah.
whole portfolio of a company, and you own many things, but at the same time you interact with every other area of the company itself. So
Yeah.
you have to think about finance, you have to think about sales, you have to think about marketing, you have to think about go-to-market in general, but all the aspects of operations. So it's known that many product people become CEOs later,
Yeah.
especially in a time where for many years into the future, it's likely that CPOs are going to be good material for CEO roles, because of the centricity of how the market is pushing companies.
100%. 100%. You've actually read my mind. I think that the trend, if you go back a few years, the path to become a CEO was either CFO or COO, right?
Yes,
Um,
it was a classic, but
it-
it's not
but it's changing.
excluded. But some companies need a product-minded approach.
100%. Because I think what you said earlier is that CPO is one of those few executive functions in which you do have a very holistic point of view about everything. Because your product doesn't live in an island, right? It's basically touches every part of the business that you can think of. And I think that path from CPO to CEO is becoming easier and easier. I think
But
there's the
I would
path
not
that you
say,
talk about is
yes. Yeah, I wouldn't
CPOs
say it's
and
easier,
board.
but it's becoming more of a natural trend.
Natural trend, yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, and that kind of is the connection to your prior question, because when you want to be a CEO, you need to understand how to work with boards, how to
Yes.
work with your board. The CEO is the only function that has maybe 8, 10, 12 bosses, whatever number
Yeah.
of board members are on the board, and mostly everybody else has one boss, one manager.
Yes.
So you need to know how to operate in that environment. It varies if the
Yeah.
company is public or private, so there are many nuances on that. But learning that is a major thing that you need to have
Yes.
to be a good,
It's
effective
great
CEO.
grooming for eventually becoming a CEO, right?
Yes.
Because you're absolutely right. I think a board is almost like a stepping stone in many ways.
Yes.
I think that's awesome. Diego, we're almost out of time, and I have so many questions, so we have to do this again. But I do have one last question, if that's
Okay.
okay with you.
I'm loving it, so I'll be happy to come again.
I know you're launching your own podcast. Can you please tell us more about that? And what are you trying to do with that podcast?
So the conversations like this are one of my favorite things to do, that in a way relate to work, but are something I have a passion for.
Yeah.
Chatting with a friend about something interesting that we both have opinion, and we may agree, we may disagree, but I love the interaction. It's one of my favorite things. Maybe for you too, because that's why you're so good at it.
This is why I do it.
I
love
love
meeting people. Like I said, this is fantastic. Yeah.
Exactly. I love the conversational aspect of this format. Now, there are so many podcasts. I don't want to repeat what others are doing. So I'm looking for specific topics that are very product centric, that are also connecting to different types of companies in a different way. So I call my podcast Product Intelligence. We haven't launched yet.
Nice.
So we're going to work with CEOs, CPOs, and CXOs in general that actually are working on how to make their product more intelligent.
Perfect.
So that connection between what a friend is working on and my take on the same thing is something that I find very exciting. We are considering actually adding a twist. We haven't started yet. This is about to start. That we may have actually a different drink of choice in every one of the podcasts. So, but I'll keep that a bit mysterious so we can actually show it at the podcast.
That's fine. I actually think it's a great idea because you're absolutely right. And I love the title, by the way, because I don't think so you actually had the title when we first talked.
Yes.
I think product intelligence is fantastic because our products are becoming intelligent, right? Or they're having more knowledge than they ever had before. And I think the way you actually build it and the way you think about it makes a huge difference.
Well, thank you so much. I love to chat with you at my podcast whenever it is up and running, and we're about to start. So,
let me know. I'll be the first one to download the episode and listen. So,
thank you so much,
Diego. This has been fantastic. Like I said, I can talk to you about this forever. I mean, we just covered pricing, security, and product and operations, right? That's only 2 or 3 things that you have to do as a board member. I want to go through all of those other things that you're focusing on as well. Because I agree with you fundamentally that your sales changes, your legal changes, your marketing changes, all of those things changes and drive companies to do new things or even get into new products and businesses that they never thought about, right?
Exactly. Yes.
So if it's okay with you, I would love to have you back. I think this is a fantastic conversation. You and I can talk forever.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah. Thank you, Mustafa, for inviting me. Thank you for the great questions, and let's do it soon. We'll
Perfect. Yes, we'll do it. We'll do it shortly. We'll have to figure out when and what, but I would love to do that.
Awesome. Yes. Well, thank you again.
Yeah, no worries. This was good. Thank you, Diego.
Thank you.
Bye for now.